Hello and welcome to Take Time. I am your host Patrick Marlette and I am absolutely giddy for this video today. This is the Seiko SKX modding video. This is hopefully the first of many modding tutorials here on the channel, but I'm going to take you from beginning to end on how to mod your Seiko SKX from a first-time modder's approach. Now, this is the first time I've actually tackled this procedure with this watch. I've disassembled my Seiko turtle and have modded that piece as a primer for this, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of techniques and tools you're definitely going to need before you start, and why don't I go over the tools we'll need before we get into this video. Now, this one isn't an essential, but I like to have a mat just in the area with different little cubbies so that I can put parts that I'm not working on aside when I'm working on the project. You'll definitely need a nice pair of tweezers. I typically use Dumont when I'm handling smaller watch parts. You'll also need a spring bar removal tool, not necessarily for the forked end in the back, but this pointed end here. You'll see why in just a moment. For our mod, we're going to be replacing the bezel, so something to remove the bezel from the watch head itself will be helpful, much like this tool here, or a scallop knife like this one here. We'll likely stick with this one as I found it was more useful for removing the bezel on my turtle. Now, as we're replacing the second hand on the SKX, you'll need one of these hand removal tools, and I'm actually really bad at replacing hands, so we'll have a lot of fun doing that today. Now, on the note of replacing hands, I'm actually going to use this little hand punch here. You can get these in various sizes, various complications, various colors. I just got this because it was an affordable one with all of the nibs, that little end here to punch in the new hand set and or just singular hand. I have a meatball and or lollipop second hand from the SKX 173. It is the other variation where the bob is at the end instead of the counterweight end. I just like that aesthetic more, but we're going to use this to replace that. But on the note of replacement parts, why don't we talk about how we're modding this watch today? So we already know that we're going for a new seconds hand, and I have that here. You can buy these individually online, either off eBay and or a Seiko repairman. Just talk to your local repairman, see if they have Seiko parts in and whether or not you can grab one of these. But I think this seconds hand is going to look really good on our watch, so I'm going to leave that off to the side for now. I also did a little bit of shopping at Crystal Time Horology, and I picked up a new sapphire crystal as well as a stainless steel chapter ring insert, and I'm very excited to check out how this looks on the watch. I also went on over to LCBI, which I believe stands for Loomed Ceramic Bezel Insert. And guess what? I got a ceramic bezel insert that is in fact loomed, and it fits in line with the theme of our mod today. So the SKX 009 is probably my favorite version of the SKX, and I don't want to venture too far from the original case and design language of the SKX series because I think it's really beautiful as is. So instead, I'm going to honor that design by going with the most premium of materials for this watch instead. The sapphire crystal I got in is the same cut as the original Hardlex. The chapter ring has laser etched minute markings in the same fashion as the plastic chapter ring on this watch, and the bezel insert is actually the same aesthetic as the Pepsi insert we already have. The ceramic bezel insert is a deep blue, and it's going to hopefully match the blue dial of our 009, so I'm just going to nickname this project Deep Blue because it is probably my favorite color for a dive watch, that dark blue, and I'm hoping it turns out well. Now, before I dive into this deep blue project, I'd like to thank Terry over at Toxic NATO for donating the SKX 009 you guys are seeing here today. It means a whole lot that you did that, Terry. I mean, tax season just wrapped up. I had to buy all these components to do this mod. I really appreciate it. This takes a huge sum of money out of the project for me, so it's super appreciated. I'm very excited to do this, and of course I'm going to be rocking this on a Toxic NATO in thanks. I'll likely wear it on this guy for the remainder of its life, but thank you so much for donating the watch. So where do we want to start on this project? Well, in my mind, we definitely need to remove the movement to get the seconds hand to stop winding around the dial face. I'm just going to be a little bit more comfortable removing the seconds hand by doing so, and also working on the case overall. Now, two tools I didn't mention are this case grip. I wouldn't recommend this model. It's not the best. It kind of holds the case in an irregular angle, but it will do the trick for our mod today. As well as this tool here. This is a case back opener, and again, I wouldn't recommend this one. It is a little dirtily, but it will do the job. I'm going to do this portion off camera, so we can focus on the more exciting bits of our mod. Now, I've loosened the case back already, so I'm going to be able to remove it. However, there's one more thing I'd like to mention that you guys might do before you start your mod. Now, you might have noticed little finger condoms that came with our ceramic bezel insert. Well, those are fine for handling the movement and the components that we're going to be working with, the smaller bits and pieces, but I just recommend using a pair of vinyl gloves that you might have lying around your kitchen. I feel a lot more comfortable wearing these instead so that I don't get any of the sweat or oil that's going to build up on my hand during this mod on any of the components or the dial, because you don't want to see those bits after you're done reassembling the watch. It's just not gonna look good. So I'm gonna wear these for the rest of the mod so I can handle the parts with comfort. And lastly, before I remove the case back, if you are going to seal this watch back up, there's going to be a gasket on the underside here that will need a little bit of silicone grease before it goes back on. So I would recommend getting a little container of some silicone grease so you can handle this job yourself. Now, with the case back removed, we shouldn't need it for a while now, so I'm going to put it on that work mat I showed you guys earlier. But before I replace it, I'm going to show you how much silicone grease is enough to put on this gasket from my experience. Though that level of experience is limited, I found that less is more when it comes to silicone grease. So what I'm going to do is leave this case back just up in the top half. And if I can, remove this gasket and leave it just down there. Now, this is why I mentioned we need that spring bar removal tool, because the next order of business is going to be removing this crown. With the pointed end of our spring bar removal tool, we are going to push a little lever that is under the movement inside of the case here. That lever is going to allow us to remove the crown from the body. However, we will need to unscrew the crown first, obviously. And with the crown unscrewed, why don't we take a look at that lever arm? I'm actually going to remove it off camera because it is hard to push down on that little lever right there and remove the crown without this thing being seated on the table. And after applying just a little bit of pressure on that lever arm with our spring bar removal tool, you'll notice that the crown has dislodged itself from the movement, so I can actually remove it and just place it on our work mat. Oh, but before I place this to the side, you'll notice that there's a little rubber gasket also seated on the head of our crown. Well, I like to cover that with a little bit of silicone grease as well. You can do so with a Q-tip, or if you're wearing gloves like this, just apply a small amount before it's replaced into the movement. Now, with the crown removed from the movement, we can actually take it outside of the case, and I'll be doing so by flipping the watch over onto this little Halfston strap tin. You can actually use movement holders or things of that nature, but I just like to use items that are laying about, that are sterile and clean, to put the movement on and off to the side. Now let's see if we can do this in one go. Sometimes the movements, these SKX uses a plastic holder for the movement inside the case, and it can get stuck on the metal sides of the interior of this case. But in an ideal world, we'd be able to just put the case, the tin case, on top of the watch and flip it over, and ideally have the movement pop out on top of the tin. Unfortunately, such is not the case here. I'll probably have to wiggle it out just a little bit with my tweezers. Now, with my tweezers, I was able to pull the movement by the plastic movement retaining ring outside of the case. And here it is, neatly resting on our Halfston tin. And you can actually see what I was referring to. There's the plastic bits of the movement holder. All I did was grip that and pull the movement clear out. Again, I'm just going to leave this off to the side, hopefully let that movement run down so the hands stop moving. If they don't, we're going to go ahead with the second hand removal procedure anyways. But for now, let's move this off to the side. Now, everything else we want to get at today, the bezel insert and the chapter ring, as well as the crystal that we are going to be replacing, is under this bezel here. And I'm not the best at removing bezels, but I'm very excited to hopefully accomplish this for you guys on camera today. It's a tricky procedure if you've never done it before. I'm sure a pro can handle it with ease, but I'll try to talk you through some of the methodology you'll need to employ to remove this bezel. Now, before you remove the bezel on your SKX, or any watch for that matter, I suggest you look at the underside of said bezel. Sometimes the manufacturer will leave a small divot or space between the bezel and the case that will allow you to insert a bezel removing tool such as this under the bezel, but I'm not seeing one here, so we're going to go ahead with the procedure anyways. Now, if you're uncomfortable using this tool on your watch, I'd advise you maybe mask this with a little bit of tape so that you don't scar the stainless steel. I'm going to be courageous and try this without. The next thing I'll note is that you're going to want to push on the bezel, the opposite side of the bezel, as you wedge this under and hopefully pry this off of your watch. Bearing that technique in mind, I'm going to apply pressure to the opposite end of the bezel here and try to insert this under and wedge this bezel clean up off of the watch. Wow, that was like a pro. I am so, you have no idea how difficult that was on my Seiko Turtle. And that was magic, guys. I'm so glad I explained, and wow. Anyways, we're going to move on. Now with the bezel clear off the body of the watch, in masterful form, we are going to leave this bezel off to the side while we remove the remaining components of the watch case. First, we'll start by getting rid of the click spring that's seated on top of the watch between the bezel and the head, and the crystal that is on top of the watch head as well. However, this is a slightly trickier thing to do. Sometimes you can muscle it out with your finger, which I tried off camera. It did not work. There is a gasket that helps seal the crystal down into the case. So there's two gaskets on the top side. There's one, again, under our bezel here, that we're gonna try to reuse. I'm just gonna apply a little bit of silicone grease. I do, however, have a new gasket for the watch head. So we'll need one more tool to accomplish getting that crystal out, and I'll show you it now. That's this! We've got this crazy looking lever arm contraption here. It comes with an assortment of dies that we can put on the end here. Essentially, we're going to fit the right die to fit inside the case and push the crystal out, as well as a die to catch the crystal. These dies are all individually sized, and I find that this 38 does a good job of seating the top end of our watch down inside of it. I'm going to try to push this watch crystal out using this 38 when it is fixed to our lever. With our die and lever arms set up, let's go ahead and put our watch head inside, give it a good press, and just like that, we should have the crystal removed. Let's get this guy out of the picture and set everything back up. You might have noticed that when I punched out the crystal, a little something extra popped out, that being our chapter ring. That's okay, it was just seated between the watch head and the crystal. That old hard Lex thing is now removed. You'll also notice that the gasket is still attached to it. I'm not too worried about that. I might just wrap up both of those things. And now we have our watch head completely separate of all its components. At this point, I'm going to wash the case off camera. I don't know if you guys could tell, but it's just a little dirty, a little too dirty for my liking. I want to work with a clean slate before we start applying the new parts. But on the chance that this video is too long, I'm going to call it quits here for this one. We've now disassembled our Seiko SKX and are on our way to modding it into the deep blue configuration that I have aligned for it. I'm very excited to see what this looks like. I'm going to continue working on this, but till our part 2, Thank you for joining me here on the channel. I hope this was informative or at least fun for you guys to watch. If you're trying to mod something at home, you can do it too. Again, this is my first time trying it out. I only know the working theory for all of this, but it's very fun. It's very exciting. If you have an SKX that you've wanted to pimp out, this is a great way to do so. Pimp out, trick out, I really don't know the lingo, what the cool kids are saying about their watch mods these days. But gang, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button. It looks a little something like this guy. If you have friends, forums, or groups that are interested in getting into an SKX mod, well, maybe share this video with them. If they were on the fence about trying it out themselves, if they've never done a mod before, well, guess what? Neither have I. It's very fun and can be done on a relative budget with all of these parts and tools. So if they're interested in trying it out themselves, well, maybe this video will be helpful for them. And if you're new to the channel, well, welcome. This is the first time I've tried out modding here and I'm having a blast. I'm very excited that this is going so favorably so far. Hopefully we'll finish it in the same manner. But if you want to see the final end of this project, the completed deep blue SKX, well, go ahead and hit that subscribe button just down below. And if you'd like to be alerted as to when that comes out, precisely when it comes out, you can hit the bell icon right next to that. Again, my name is Patrick Marlett, and thank you for the time.